Well, good morning. Good morning to everyone. It's really good to be with you this morning. Karen, I think you're just getting online as we start. There you are. Hey, good morning. It's good to see you this morning. You know,
Hey Justin, how are you?
I'm doing all right. I've been thinking a lot actually about our people and in that cycle of lifetime when we reflect on what's giving us strength and holding us in this time, and so much of it's connected to nature. And I know you've been up north a little bit this summer, and I'm curious. Maybe you have one or two experiences about some of the joys and challenges and wonders of nature that you might share with us this morning as we get started.
Well, we've been here 2.5 months up here in the North Woods, a couple miles from a road near Cass Lake, and I saw my first bear. I thought it was a very odd looking dog, but then I said to Aspen, I think that is a bear. And it was just a remarkable experience seeing a little juvenile bear roaming around. And now I've found that he's likes raspberries and is very busy. And I think left a footprint on my car the other day.
Oh
So
goodness.
we have a bond. It's quiet. We're leaving this week, so we're going to have some really sad goodbyes.
Yeah.
I also met a fox. So my
Ah,
life has been very, very limited, but very expansive with regard to nature. I walk around with a funny little northern Minnesota hat and binoculars around my neck now. I have changed. No more
I
cute
love it.
bow ties and pretty shoes.
I love it. I love it. Well, we're excited to welcome you back to the cities and know that that's been a good time of rest and rejuvenation up north for you and your family. I've been enjoying just myself. I've been enjoying biking to lakes. I've been biking to Cedar Lake and swimming late in the evening, and that has been really
Oh,
wonderful. And I did see a fox the other day, just a red-tailed fox kind of running down the street. So those are my
yeah,
little
that's
adventures
pretty
with
cool.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure we'll hear more of this in the service as we get to the cycle of life. But let's begin. I want to say good morning to everyone. My name
It's
is
great to do
Justin
worship
Berger.
with you again. Yes,
Oh, awesome to do worship with you too, Karen, for sure. I want
it's
to
been a long
welcome.
time.
It has been a while. It's good to share this space with you. I want to welcome the children and youth and adults who are with us. I want to welcome everyone who's joining us from living rooms and couches and kitchen tables, and maybe even a bed if you're just chilling out with a cup of coffee and put the paper down and have joined us for worship. Whether you're from Minneapolis or St. Paul or around the state or the country, we're really glad you're with us this morning. I also want to do a shout out to our furry friends that are watching with us. I know in this time of sheltering in place and being home more often, those furry friends mean a lot. So welcome all you dogs. Who's a good dog? You're a good dog. And meow to our cat lovers out there. Hey, you got to have a little fun with this crazy time we're in. And while we're gathering, if you haven't already, you're welcome to say hello in the chat box and just let us know where you're joining us from, and we can welcome one another into this space. Make sure when you send a message in the chat that it's set to all panelists and attendees so we can all see it. Just a friendly reminder as well, no one can see you and no one can hear you. So if your hair isn't perfect or you're chilling out in your PJs right now, don't worry about it. We don't know. We're just glad you're here with us for worship. And if you have trouble hearing the audio, you can always dial in on the Zoom call to hear that a little bit better. For over 160 years, in the Universalist spirit of love and hope, we have been the people that have practiced giving and receiving and growing together. We are the people who welcome and affirm and protect the light in each human heart, who listen deeply to where love is calling us next, and who, with humility, courage, and compassion, act to create a more just world. We do all of these things as a faith community committed to racial justice. This is the life that we invite you into, and these are the practices that anchor us as a faith community. We are living in a time, and will continue to live in a time, when church has left the building. And this reality reminds us that church has never really been about a building, though there is something about that physical togetherness that matters, but ultimately church is not about a building. It is about a community that gathers to remember its core values and aspirations, a community that comes together to journey together through life, through the hardships, through the justice making, through the grieving that is a part of life. And it is a community that comes together to care for one another and for those around us. And so in remarkably new ways in this time, we are experiencing church in our homes, in our living rooms, in the streets, in the communities we are a part of, and we are experiencing it right here in this virtual space made sacred by our presence. So welcome, it's great to be with you this morning. And what is also true, and I think we just need to hold this close to our hearts as well, is that these are hard times we are living in. And if this time is particularly hard for you, if you are struggling to buy groceries or basic necessities, or if you are struggling with a rent payment or a mortgage payment or a medical bill or anything else, if you're struggling emotionally or spiritually, or living with mental illness and really struggling with depression or whatever it might be, this time probably feels overwhelming. And we are here for you, and we are here for one another. Every single week, we receive requests for support, financial support from the church, spiritual support from the church, from members and friends who are part of our community. Asking for support might feel vulnerable and kind of countercultural, in a culture that wants us to have it together and pretend we don't have needs or real stresses in our lives. But asking for support and being vulnerable helps create the kind of culture that we want to be in. It helps create the world that we want to live in, where we can actually care for one another and support one another. And so if you are struggling, please reach out to me, reach out to Reverend Karen or anyone on staff so that we can hold that struggle with you and share that burden with you. And if you're looking for deeper involvement in our faith community, there are a number of ways you can connect with us. If you're not yet receiving our weekly electronic newsletter, The Liberal, you can go online to sign up for that, and then you'll find out all kinds of opportunities during the week for other involvement and engagement and connection and fellowship. You're welcome to join us on Wednesday at 7 p.m. for our half-hour worship service, this midweek service, a time to recharge and center and kind of find a little bit of balance in the middle of the week. Following the service today, we're offering 2 virtual coffee hours, one for Black, Indigenous, and multiracial people of color, and then one for everyone else. There are links on the website to those coffee hours. And next Sunday, you're invited to join our First Step class. It's a short 45-hour-long class that's on Zoom, and it's designed for anyone who's interested in learning more about the church and being connected to what's happening here. So in this First Step class, we're offering it next Sunday after the service. You'll have a chance to introduce yourself, meet some other folks, share a bit about your faith journey and what brought you here, and then learn about the church and ways to be involved. That class is led by a member of the congregation, and if you join us next Sunday, we hope you'll have your audio and video on your, it's in a Zoom room, so that we can see one another and get to know one another and do that important work of building community together. So we're offering that next Sunday, right after the service. And so now I invite you to take a deep breath, just to come into your body and into this space to feel the presence of several hundred other people sharing this moment and this time with you, this time of connection, this time of renewal, this time of opening our hearts and feeling all that is there. So let's start by grounding together, grounding and centering our bodies together with 3 deep breaths. And now I invite you to find your chalice, if you have a chalice nearby, or a candle that you like to light to begin this hour of worship together. And we'll light it in just a moment as Rasana and Nora lead us in our chalice lighting and the words for the lighting of the chalice. And then after the chalice lighting, we'll watch a short video from artist Fred Wilson. Welcome once again.
Please join me in the words for the lighting of our chalice. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
I remember that one of the last things, as I graduated college, I was the only black student in the art school at this state university. The chair of the department said to me, "Do you want to be part of the black art world or the white art world?" Now, all 4 years, nobody had said anything that there were two, and I'm like, what does that mean? I worked at the Museum of Natural History out of college, and I also worked at the Metropolitan. And eventually I began to have ideas about these environments. Some of them house the same cultures. If you look at Africa, Asia, and native objects, they both have these collections, but how they display them, what they say about them, the environment that they're placed in is very different. And to me, this was fascinating because it just showed in high relief how the museum creates meaning according to what they want you to know. But then there's these other parts of that meaning that they are not wholly in control of. What is being received and who's receiving it, and what does it do to the artists who made these particular objects? As a person of color, even more so, this is laid onto you by other people. And essentially at that time, it was just, white Americans creating the meaning. There are a lot of things in the world as well, not just in the museum, that for the most part, they're not being examined. And very banal things like a coffee cup or any kind of advertising or object, they're not being examined because we're going about our daily lives and doing our thing, and we don't have the time to examine every little thing. When I slow down, I begin to muse on what are these things really about, what are their particular histories, and I think things have shifted in the museum world. I don't think the museum people were trying not to include us in the conversation. They just didn't realize they weren't including us in the conversation. When I first got to do a project with the museum, it affected museum professionals really strongly because I was using their language in a way that they never would use. Because I had worked in museums, I understood the didactic, I understood display in a way that they themselves could not. Like newspapers, if you're aware that there are various perspectives, even within the fact that they are giving you their full scholarship and their full knowledge, then you don't have to pick apart the institution. You're just aware that they're going to have a different point of view, and you can understand your perspective in relation to that. So I just say don't ignore that, but still enjoy the exhibition in the museum.
I really appreciate how Fred Wilson deconstructs what a museum is, and I love how by curating a space, an exhibit in a new way, he reveals how consciously or unwittingly museums reinforce racist beliefs or cultural stereotypes or behaviors. As an artist, he flips the script, so we see everything anew with fresh eyes. And this next piece of music you will hear, it does that same kind of thing, but it does it musically. It takes something we know very well, and cracks it wide open so we experience it in a new and surprising and provocative way.
My friend Abby wrote an upside down version of the Star Spangled Banner. So the melody goes like this in the original. And in her version, anything that goes up goes down. So instead of, it would sound something like, so together it would go. So it's just a beautiful way to make a statement using music theory.
With that upside down star-spangled banner in our ears and washing over our bodies, I want to invite all of us in this space to come into a time of intentional breath and intentional stillness, a time of prayer, if that's a word that helps you come into this place of rest, or meditation, if that's a word that helps you still your mind and focus on your breath. This is a time where, as one body, we settle. We move in a slower rhythm. We open our hearts to the week, to our lives, to the world, and hold it with love and care. Always and forever, while we are alive, our breath is with us. Like a friend, like a companion, like a beloved that will not leave our side. In frightening moments, in anxious moments, in moments of delight and joy, the breath is right there. If we are feeling tight and worried, our breath might be shallow and quick, but it is there, a reflection of our inner state. If we are feeling relaxed and comfortable and present, our inhalation might feel like it lasts a lifetime as we breathe all the way down to our toes and into the earth itself. And we see that our breath mirrors that place of peace that we feel. No matter what, our breath is with us. And watching our breath can be like watching a master teacher. So let's do that now together. Let's settle in and settle down and allow our breath to just come in and out of our bodies, to notice. What that feels like. To breathe in until our lungs are full. And follow our breath all the way out on that exhalation. And as we are breathing, I invite you to feel the contact your body has with the floor. If you're sitting, notice the weight of your body on the chair, notice your feet on the floor. Or if they're tucked up underneath you, notice how that feels. If you're lying down on a couch, notice your body and its weight across the couch. Just become aware of your body and the space that it is and what it feels like as your body has contact with the objects around it. You can notice your belly and your chest as you breathe. Here you are, breathing. Here I am, breathing. Here we are together, breathing. Across time and space, we are one body, one body breathing together. So let us rest in that breath and in this silence that makes us one. Spirit of love, source of mystery and wonder, be with us this morning as we journey inward to our interior museums, open to discovering what exhibits and artifacts are present there. We know we contain multitudes, that we each contain many rooms with many stories and experiences that shape us, that shape how we see the world. Help us, Spirit of Life, to discover what is hidden in storage closets or tucked into corners or covered with sheets. And help us discover what happens when we rearrange those objects, when those stories move into different places in those rooms. Help us be attentive to what happens then. Help us listen for those voices that have a story to tell. Help us notice a new truth that emerges from those spaces. Help us be mindful that when we curate our history and the stories of our lives in new ways, both troubling and beautiful things may emerge. And help us notice what happens with our breath and our body as we enter these interior spaces. We are in a time when so much feels upside down. So help us, Spirit of Love, ride the waves of emotion that come with this time. And help us discover the treasures that do exist in this upside down time. As we journey through these days together, we recognize those among us who are worried, who are lonely, who are living alone. We recognize those whose primary spiritual practice is parenting, which may be the most challenging and rewarding of all spiritual practices. We recognize those who are grieving and those who feel dislocated because the future feels so cloudy and unknown. This morning, as we come together, we remember that no feeling is permanent. Despair, hopelessness, joy, delight, no feeling lasts forever. Feelings are like a breeze. They wash over us, they bring about sensations in our bodies, and then they move on. And so in a moment, I invite you to give voice to the concerns you carry, the feelings that are with you now, feelings of grief or sorrow or deep worry, so that all of us in that larger source we are a part of, call it love or spirit or God, so that all of us and that larger source can hold those worries, those concerns together. I invite you to type into the chat box those sorrows or concerns that are with you, or simply to hold them in the silent sanctuary of your heart, trusting and knowing that we hold that with you. I invite you to share those concerns now. We are missing people close to us that we love. We are worried about our communities and worried about what's happening in our communities. Friends who are in cities that are deep in unrest. Our children are worried about their mental health and well-being. Grandparents who have passed away. Struggles with depression and the very real heaviness of that. There's a lot of worry, a lot of sorrow with us right now. And we witness this sorrow. We witness the work we are doing as we are separated from friends and family. We see each other and know there is a great weight as we are isolated, trying to stay healthy and protect those we love. There is so much concern for our country, for our democracy, for our pets and our beloved furry friends who are not well. There is a lot we are carrying right now. And so I want to invite all of you just to breathe with one another, to hold these worries, these concerns, the rawness of what is being shared right now, to hold it, to know you are not alone in what you are carrying, and to recognize also that a community is holding the sorrow that you have shared. In addition to what has been named this morning, we hold Lane Ayers in our hearts. Lane was in a bike accident last week and fractured his pelvis in 3 places. He is recovering at home and welcomes your prayers and healing thoughts. We hold Lane and his wife, Marion, this morning. And I want to remind all of us, I always need to remind myself, honestly, that there's no single story that defines our lives, no feeling that lasts forever. Sorrow weaves with joy, and resentment turns to gratitude. Fear opens to curiosity and wonder. Humility and surrender can remind us that the point of life is not perfection. The point of life is to be in life, to be in life with all that it offers, the joys and the blessings both. And so I invite you now in the chat box, if you are willing, I invite you to share those things that are lifting your spirits, that are bringing you joy, that are helping you turn the corner from despair to hope. And you may go back to despair right around the next corner, but in this moment, what is helping you turn that corner? I invite you to share those things that are helping you stay grounded in this time. You're invited to share those in the chat box. So much of this is flying by, but so much of it is connected. I just see these words like blooming and nature and hiking and farmers markets and butterflies and lakes and camps. No, not camps, the boundary waters, fresh tomatoes, Zoom gatherings with family, going to the zoo, first ripe tomatoes. Indeed, our friends, our animals, having a walk, technology that can bring us together so you don't feel alone or isolated or in the same way. So many, ice cream, socially distanced camp. It is good to take note. It is good to take note of the things that can bring us joy. And again, I invite you just to take this in, and if you need to, at the end of the service, scroll back through what has been shared. I will sometimes do that as people sign off, and just read what has been shared, holding both the sorrows, but those joys as well, because maybe there's a joy in there that speaks to a place in you, and you think, I'm gonna do that. That I can see how that would bring me delight, how that would lift my spirits. So again, we hold this joy as part of what is true this morning as we come together. So friends, may the grip of addiction be loosened. May the weight of oppression be lightened. May grief be shared. May joy break through. And may love make every suffering bearable. May it be so. Amen. And blessed be. And now Franco, our pianist, Franco Holder, will play Spirit of Life.
In the spring of 1994, I was in the basement of the Maryland Historical Society with the artist you viewed on the video today, Fred Wilson. I was an exhibit developer at the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago, where I was working on a major exhibition about Africa and the African diaspora. I had come to Baltimore to consult with Fred because he was a great visual storyteller. He was developing an exhibit from the artifacts in the Historical Society's collection. We roamed the temperature-controlled rooms and alcoves with our special gloves, and we picked up silver pictures from the 1800s and an endless number of obscure paintings that depicted wealthy Maryland farmers of the 18th and 19th century. We also found a section of the collection where the objects were labeled not for public viewing, not for display. And on these shelves and in these bins were iron shackles, KKK hoods, whites only signs, and dehumanizing images of Black women, men, and children. A smile filled Fred's face as he picked up the shackles used to enslave our relatives. He brought the shackles over to the ornate silver pitchers and placed them next to each other, not touching, but close by. And he said, "This is it." And from the juxtaposition of these objects that he later called metalwork, a major exhibit was being conceived that was about to challenge the museum world. When Fred found a whipping post, it ended up becoming the centerpiece for the most dramatic and visually arresting portion of the entire exhibition. This century-old instrument of punishment and torture designed for enslaved Africans was tucked away among a number of antique cabinets. This incongruous storage arrangement provided us with hysterics, but also with Fred with his ironic title for the installation, Cabinet Making, 1820 to 1960. Arranging antique Victorian chairs dating from 1820 to 1896 around the whipping post caused a stir. With these few objects, no labels, no historical video supplementing and explaining the chair and the whipping post, just these objects, Fred showed us the true nature of American hypocrisy. One of the ways Wilson made the invisible visible was by rewriting the tags of the museum's paintings and changing the lighting to redirect viewers' attention. Further, in a series of talking paintings, Wilson gave Black child slaves voices by playing recordings with such questions as, "Who calms me when I'm afraid? Who washes my back? Am I your friend? Am I your brother? Am I your pet?" By altering the lighting and focusing the image of the child slave in the photograph, in the painting, and adding this audio, he drew attention to people and groups who were historically have had no voice and that were invisible and mute. Now, the museum can be kind of like a kind parent. You know, it ushers us into to the edge of the exhibit and puts us in these sort of rarefied moments. It's really an amazing moment when you go into a museum as a child. If you think back to the time you first went into a museum, just think about it for a second. What museum was it? What did you see? What did your parents say as they guided you along the rails? Do you have an image? Is it holding you? Now, this kind parent that's coming, ushering us along the edge of the exhibit rails, is moving us towards moments of wonder and awe, insight and revelation. But the museum can also be a parent that critiques, jerking us back from the diorama to say, "Now, wait a minute," or repossessing the very same experience of wonder with a nuanced eye for the story that is missing from the labels. Now, in the early 1990s, I was part of a very rarefied world of Black thinkers, along with Fred Wilson, Faith Ruffins, Amina Dickerson, Lonnie Bunch, who is now the head of the Smithsonian. We were a new group of Black museum professionals, artists, exhibit developers, historians, and curators who were interrogating the country's major museums to tell new stories about human beings, the cultures they created, and the legacy they left us. Now, much of our work led to congressional legislation that forced museums to deaccession material culture of Native Americans in the mid-90s and return them to their original owners. Our work also led to the creation of the African American Museum that is now in the Washington Mall. That was years in the making, and much of the agitation came from Black museum professionals. Our hope was to engage visitors in understanding a new history through multiple lenses, and to repent also for the theft and destruction of cultural remains of Indigenous people throughout the world. I am reminded of that time in the 90s during these past few weeks and months, as we have been asked as a country to look critically at the symbols, monuments, and exhibits that populate our public spaces. This re-examination of public placement and messaging, this historical criticism, this identification of statue names, this reckoning with their stories is movement work. It is the work that had been building for years. Prior to getting ropes and pulling down these statues, we used to gather in Columbus Circle in New York City on that holiday to make speeches and claim the wrongful, inhumane treatment of Indigenous people. Prior to Teddy Roosevelt's triumphant horse being removed from the entrance of the American Museum of Natural History, Black and Native artists had staged performance art every year that deconstructed the posture and messaging of that massive museum entrance sculpture. And to consider, why was this sculpture at the entrance of the museum? The packing of sculptures that debase Black bodies, the leveling of monuments that honor the rape of women, the removal of symbols of sedition and betrayal, the closing of these crates does not mean that the behavior that these images, names, and stories propagated ceases to be operative in our psyche. It simply means they are not as prominently displayed with aggrandizement and honor. They may go into the basement of a museum, but they are not gone. I remember my Nana taking me to a colored section of a movie when I was very, very, very young, very early 60s. It was the balcony, and I thought it was cool to be up there, as did the rest of us kids, but the adults looked glum and irritated up there. Eventually, the signs did come down and we could sit wherever we wanted, but we still gravitated to the balcony. In the mid-70s, they stopped advertising employment for men and women in separate help wanted sections of the newspaper. But the women still weren't hired as mechanics or bus drivers. They took down the Christian crosses that religious people were allowed to hammer over the gay bars in towns across this country to wash away their sins as they came into the gay bar. But every year, trans people are still murdered. As Unitarian Universalists, our history is often framed in the stories of famous individuals. And we have lots of memorials and monuments and statues to these people, particularly in New England, many that need to be interrogated. We know from our Unitarian history that many Unitarians sought to end slavery, and some sought to continue it. Theodore Parker hid and defended fugitive slaves, financed slave insurrections, and delivered fiery and anti-slavery sermons. Yet most Boston Unitarians supported the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 and supported the continuation of slavery because of the wealth it provided for their industries. Do we take their monuments out of Copley Square? Do we take them out of Harvard Square? A few weeks ago, our pastoral care team had a visit with the pastoral care team and a minister from Thomas Jefferson Memorial Church in Charlottesville, Virginia. They reached out to us to see how we were doing and to share their learnings from 3 years ago from having their city be at the center of international attention when the Unite the Right rally came to their city to ostensibly protect Confederate statues. It was an extraordinary gesture by that church and their minister, and we had a tremendous conversation. And we have some new friends who are encouraging us to think about what things might be like 3 years from now here in Minneapolis after the George Floyd murder. Towards the end of our visit, Reverend Alex McGee described a member of her church who 3 years ago was resistant to change. He was a Unitarian, like many in the South, who still held on to the culture of the Confederacy as his heritage. He may have participated in reenactments of the Civil War. He may have had a Confederate flag at some time on the wall of his den. He may have said things. He may have done things. He's one of us. He's a Unitarian Universalist. After the Unite the Right rally, this congregant started attending meetings and discussion groups and consciousness-raising activities. He started reading and reflecting, like many of us are in our congregation as well. The minister took note of this and wanted to know what was different for him and how he was making meaning of this dive he had taken deeply into the topics that he would have rather avoided a few years ago. He said that sometime he has a Confederate museum in his mind. He roams the exhibits and the rooms and then decides to wander out of them into new places with different exhibits. His reflection inspired this sermon today. I couldn't let it go. It was an amazing metaphor. So friends, think about it. Each of us may have a museum in our mind, dioramas that explain hominid development, labels that categorize cultures, images that are emblazoned on our memory of the Venus Hottentot, all supported by our monthly digestion of those old-time National Geographics that depicted the Yanomami of the Amazon as voyeuristic treasures to behold. Our History as You Use is also a museum of rooms that may need a little dusting and rearranging, like Fred Wilson did when he positioned 6 cigar store Indian statues with their backs facing the visitors as they looked upon photographs of their descendants on reservations today. Friends, I have a charge for you as a person of faith, a person who values questions, a person who is curious, a person who is willing to change their mind. My charge to you is to ask yourself, what is in my museum collection? How did I acquire these artifacts and timelines? What is being suggested in the labels that explain the context of these objects? As you tour through your mind's museums and monuments and statues continues, where do you stop to pay close attention? Now, you've finished the tour. Now I'm going to ask you, friends, to do an evaluation. We museum people love evaluation. So I want you to fill out an evaluation and ask yourself, what statues need to be pulled down because they no longer serve you as the person you are becoming or have become? Which personal monuments need to be interrogated deeply? What objects are stereotypes of your parents' imagination? What exhibits debase your humanity? Then I want you to drop your evaluation in the museum drop box as you exit. And I want you, or hit send, a modern museum now, hit send on the iPad screen. And I want you to send this evaluation to yourself and see if it aligns with your values. See if it aligns with your UU principles and purposes. See if it aligns with the purposes and principles of this church. If it aligns with your sources of your faith and your theological constructs. See if it does. Finally, just prior to the Civil War, Unitarian minister, Thomas Starr King, said that Universalists believe that God is too good to damn humans, while the Unitarians believe that humans are too good to be damned. Someday, friends, someday, when our interior museum evaluations are reviewed, the monuments and statues, we will be able to say, we are too good to be damned, because we remove the totems to white supremacy from the public square. Someday we might be able to say we are too good to be damned because we erected statues to collectivists and freedom fighters like John Lewis and Harriet Tubman, to James Reeb and Alicia Garza, to Russell Means and Angela Davis. Someday we might be able to say we are too good to be damned because we built museums not to collect material culture, but to create innovative communities of mutuality. Someday we might be able to say we are too good to be damned because we realize that the future of our faith will depend on us getting it right now or not at all. Blessed be. Amen. And don't forget to fill out your evaluations. Thank you.
Karen, thank you so much for your words and those really rich, challenging, troubling, provocative metaphors that kind of call us into a inventory taking of our own thoughts and ideas and practices. And I have to say, every time I think I have a sense of who you are and kind of feel like I know you a little bit, you surprise me always with new stories and insights. And it's just a reminder, I think, that there's no single story that defines any of us, no one dimensionality to any of us, and we need to hold space for the wonder and mystery and complexity in each human heart. So thank you so much for your words this morning. Today, our offering will be a 50-50 split between the First Universalist Ministers Emergency Fund. This is the fund that helps folks in need with rent or groceries or medical bills or whatever it might be. It'll be a 50-50 split between that fund and First Universalist Church. And I want you to know that that fund helps numerous people every single week who are in financial hardship. And we know this. We are living in a time where more and more people we know, and even our own friends and family, and even ourselves, are struggling with work, with employment, with housing. These challenges are only going to get worse, and we are seeing that all around us. Sometimes that means there's no money for groceries. Sometimes that means you have to make hard choices about what bill gets paid, and it's very, very difficult. And so this offering today, your support for one another, this tangible gift that will go to someone you probably don't know, but you know because they're in this community, makes a world of difference. It is a concrete gesture of kindness and care and compassion, and it's a reminder that we truly are in this together. There's a number of ways you can give. You can give on your phone with text to give, or on Square Cash, the Square Cash app. You can write a check and send that to the church. You can go to the website and give online. Any of those ways are just fine. As we prepare to give and receive our offering, we'll hear meditation on breathing, sung by the choir of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston. Let us now give and receive our offering.
For our closing words, no matter how weak or how frightened we may feel, we each have gifts that can make a difference in this world. In this coming week, may you do at least one thing to support the broken, to welcome the stranger, to celebrate what is worthy, and do the work of justice and love. Be strong, hold on, stay connected. Each day act, each day meditate, so you may be a little more whole. As we prepare to take our leave, the amazing Franco Holder will lead us in Go Now in Peace. We ask now that you extinguish your chalice and in the chat, share where are you carrying this flame this week? For whom are you carrying this flame? And why are you carrying this flame of Unitarian Universalism? Let us inspire one another. Blessed be.